We begin today the Gemara right at the beginning of the Bava Metzia, Ve'ela ha the Amar Rav Nachman. The Gemara here is discussing the shvuah that it said in our Mishnah. When you have shnai moichsim betalis, and each one says kula shali, the halach is that each one has to swear that I have no less than half of it, and then you divide it. So Rabbi Yechanan explained the reason for the shvuah is because otherwise we suspect one of them to go and just grab someone's talis. If he can just grab it and he'll get half of it, so then people will just go and grab. So the Gemara asks him that, if that's what we're suspecting this person, that he's just a gazlan and he's grabbing someone's talis, so then what's the point of having him swear that no less than half is mine? If you're suspecting him of stealing, wouldn't he swear falsely as well? So what do you gain by having him swear? So Gemara said, according to Rabbi Yechanan, that no, it actually doesn't work that way. Even a person that's chashid amamayne, that we suspect him for stealing, we don't suspect him for swearing falsely. When it comes to swearing, he's going to be careful and he will not swear falsely. The Gemara asked a couple of questions on this concept, and the Gemara answered all of them. Here, the Gemara is going to ask some more questions, and here the Gemara is going to actually show and prove this idea where the Gemara actually tried to bring rayas. That's what it is. The Gemara before tried to bring proofs to this concept, that even though we suspect him for stealing, he's not suspected for swearing falsely. And the Gemara showed how all these proofs are not proofs, because there's many different cases where a person has to swear, but it's not because we're suspecting him of being a ganav. But here, though, the Gemara now will bring cases where the only reason this person has to swear is because we suspect him of being a ganav. And yet, he swears. So therefore, that proves that even though he's suspected for stealing, which the Gemara calls chashid amamayne, he's not chashid hashvuasa. He's not chashid to be swearing falsely. So let's see. So the Gemara Navela Hadam Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said, "Mashbi and shvuas heses, a person that denies an entire claim." He says the kaifer akail. He denies the whole thing. So minat Torah, there's no shvu in such a case. But we had before here the Gemara Daf Hey brought Rav Nachman said in the time of the Gemara they instituted that he has to swear a shvuas heses. He still has to swear when he's denying this claim. He has to swear to back up his claim. So why does he have to swear? Why did Chachamim in the time of the Gemara institute this shvuah? Because they suspected people that when they deny a claim that they're stealing, that really they owe this money. So if so, the question is, if you suspect the person of stealing, name it, shouldn't we say, Migu, the chashad amamayne, if you suspect this person of stealing this money, chashad hashvuasa, you should be suspected also of swearing falsely. What's the point of having him swear? The Rishonim have a hard time with this raya the Gemara brings here, because we already had before in the Gemara a few times. The Gemara says when it comes to a claim which a person denies, it's not necessarily a raya that he's interested in stealing, and we're suspecting him of being a ganav, and therefore he would swear falsely. It may simply be that he doesn't have the money available to pay, and he's denying it because he wants to delay the payment, which the Gemara refers to before as ishtamutika mishtamet. He's just trying to avoid payment right now. So lav dafke, he's even chashid amamayna. Some Rishonim actually even say that this is not really the real raya. Some even want to. This raya is not so clear. The Gemara brings another raya. The Su Taisus over here talks about it also. Okay. The Su Hadet Tani Rab Chia. Another thing which was brought up earlier here. Rab Chia teaches. This is the case of Chenveni al Penkasei. So just to remind you what that case is. When you have a situation where a person owes money to his workers, and he tells the storekeeper, "I want you to pay my workers, and then I'll reimburse you." What ends up happening? Storekeeper comes and says, "I paid your workers. Reimburse me now." And the workers say, "We never got paid." So the Mishnah says, here, interesting, the Gemara actually quotes this from a Braisa of Rab Chia. Rashi says he doesn't know why it's quoting it from a Braisa. It's a Mishnah and Shavuos. And the Mishnah there says that both of them, the storekeeper swears that he paid, the workers will swear that they never got paid, and they'll both not collect money from this individual, from this balabas. Nishbaim v'neitlin. So Rab Chia taught Shneim Nishbaim v'neitlin mi balabais. They both swear that the storekeeper swears that he paid, and the workers swear that they never got any payment, and they will collect money from the balabas. Question is, we should say over here, Migudu chashad amamayne. If you're having each one of them swear for their claim, so that has to be because you're suspecting them that they're lying. The storekeeper never paid, and he's saying he did. The workers got paid, and they're saying that they did not get paid. So if he's chashad amamayne, if that's what you're suspecting them of, chashad hashvuasa, their shvuah should also be suspected. You can't trust their shvuah either. The Su, another case, Rav Sheshis. Rav Sheshis said the following halacha. This is regarding a shemei chinam that had something that he was keeping for his friend, and he comes and he claims it got stolen from me. And by Hashem Echinam, he's not responsible, unless it's a pshia. If it's a negligence, he's responsible. But he claims it got stolen, and therefore he says, I'm potter, I'm not responsible. So over here, in this case, Rav Shesha says that he's going to have to swear about 3 different matters to make sure that what he's saying is true. One point that we're suspecting is Shalosh Shvush Mashbina. So 3 different things he has to swear about. One is Shvush Shalei Peshati Ba. He swears that it wasn't my negligence. He claims that it got stolen, so he has to swear that it wasn't his own negligence. Shvush Shalei Shalachti Ba Yad. He also has to swear that he didn't touch this item and use it for himself. The moment a shomer uses an item for himself, now he becomes responsible for anything that happens to it. He's like a ganav. He becomes responsible even for an einus that happens to it. So he has to swear that I didn't touch it. And shvua she'ena b'reshusi. And then he also has to swear that he doesn't actually have it, which means that we're actually suspecting him that he might have it in his house and he wants to keep it for himself, and therefore he's saying that it got stolen and he's potter. So over here, Gemara is actually focusing primarily that Rishonim say in the last shvua, when it says here that he's swearing that he doesn't have it in his possession. So you're suspecting him that he has it in his house and he's not returning it? So if so, we should say, if you suspect him for stealing it, so you should suspect him that he would swear falsely. So what's the point of having him swear? So the conclusion of all these cases is, we see here the point, according to Rabbi Yochanan, because a person is suspected of stealing, it doesn't mean that we should suspect him of swearing falsely. And therefore, according to Rabbi Yochanan, what's the pshat in our Mishnah? When 2 people grab a talis and each one says it's all mine, why do they swear? Because we suspect one of them of stealing. But still there's a point in having him swear. Because when it comes to swearing, he will not swear falsely. That's Rabbi Yochanan's pshat in our Mishnah.
Why?
So I mentioned yesterday, Tosfos on Daf Hey Amud Beis explains it. Chashad HaMamayna, Tosfos there says either because the isser of swearing falsely is more severe in a person's eyes, or Tosfos says a person did one isser, he's not ready to do a second isser as well. At a certain point, he stops. He's not going to steal and swear falsely. Abaya says a different shot in our Mishnah. What are we suspecting this person when he grabs a talis of another person and there's a shvuah here? Something else that we're concerned about. We're not concerned that this guy is a ganav. Abai actually disagrees. Abai says if we would be suspecting him as being a ganav, so then there would be no point of him swearing, because he would swear falsely. So what's the case of our Mishnah? Why is he swearing? Chashina, because what we're afraid of is over here, Shema milvi yishana yesh le'yalav. Maybe this person that went and grabbed the talis, there was an old loan from years ago that this person owed you, and you couldn't collect it from him. You thought to yourself, I'm going to come and tell him that he owes me this money. I know for a fact this guy forgot about this entire loan, so I won't be able to get my payment. So let me grab a talis from him, and then we're going to split the talis, and I'll get my payment. And Rashi says when you do this, the halacha by a loan is that you get paid even miglima dal kasve. A person has to pay. If he owes you money, he has to pay you even from the shirt off his back. So you grab a shirt of his and you get half of it, and that's how you get your payment. That's the only thing that we're concerned about. We're not chayshed to eat for stealing. We're chayshed that it may have been an old loan, and this is why he's grabbing the talis, because he wants to get this payment. So the Gemara asks on this, if that's the case, so yachi nishka b'loy shvua. If you see someone grabbing someone's a talis, 2 people are holding a talis, hey, come right here. If you see that you grab someone's talis, we're not suspecting him of stealing. It's just that there must have been an old loan, and therefore he's grabbing a hold of this. So then why is he swearing altogether? So then half of it is taka his, so you should just get half of it. So the Gemara adds and changes this a bit little. Elo, rather, what Abai is saying is, Chayshina, what we're concerned of is, Shem is Safik Milvi Yeshana Yesh Le'yalav. Maybe this person himself, there's a suffix about this. He doesn't remember. There may have been a loan once that this person owes you. It's a suffix whether he owes you this money or not. And that's why this person went ahead and grabbed this talis for himself. And so therefore, because it's something that he's not even sure about, so therefore we have him swear in order for him to think twice about this. Is this taka true that this person owed you the money or not? But the Gemara asks him this. One second. V'lav amrino, wouldn't we say, if this person is ready to grab money from his friend, in this case a talis, or whatever it may be, he's ready to grab something from his friend, misfeke, because he's saying it's possible that he owes me money from a long forgotten loan. So mishtabanami misafik. So shouldn't we say that he would be ready to swear because of this suffix? He thinks to himself, the fact that I'm swearing about this, it's not a sheker. He thinks in his mind, it's possible that this person taka owed me money. So what's going to help if he's going to swear about this? So the Gemara says, no, it's not that way. There's a big difference between grabbing someone's money because he may have once owed you money, or swearing about this. Rav Sheshes Breder Ravidi explains, Parshi Inchi Misafik Shvua. When it comes to a case where you're going to swear about money that your friend has, that he may have owed you this money, if you're not 100% sure that he actually owes it to you, you're not going to swear about this. But Veloy Parshi Misafik Memaina. But if you think that it's a 50% chance that your friend owes you money, you're going to go and grab something from him, and even though it might not be true. My time, what's the difference? Because the money that you grab from him, you think to yourself, first let me have the money in my possession. Then when I'll remember and I'll figure out, I'll look at my records and I'll find out whether he owed me the money or not. If it turns out he doesn't, I'll return it to him. But if you swear and then it turns out that you swore falsely about this, that's something you can't take back. You did the Issa already. So therefore when it comes to a Shvua, a person will not swear unless he's 100% sure that this person owes him the money. So according to Abaye, this is the reason for the Shvua in our Mishnah. We're not suspecting this person of being a Ganev, but we're suspecting that he may have grabbed someone's talis because he's thinking, I think this guy might have owed me money. So therefore we say, swear about this. And then the person will come and say, no, I'm not sure about this, and therefore he'll let go of the talis. It's similar, the Rishonim say that it's similar also to the previous cases that are brought up over here. All these cases that the Gemara said, so the Gemara proved it before. So the Rishonim say the same thing in all these cases by the Chemvini and the storekeeper that is, the Chemvini and the workers, all those cases. According to Abaye, the only reason Chachamim imposed the Shvuah in those cases is not because we're suspecting of anyone being an outright Gazlan. An outright Gazlan Chachamim would not impose a Shvuah. In all those cases, the person that's making this claim is because he's thinking that this guy might owe me money, and therefore he's grabbing it, or he's claiming that he's owed money. And therefore he has to make a shvuah for him to think twice about this, and then by a shvuah he won't swear unless he knows 100%.
So how does Abaye take from any mitzvah in the Mishnah?
He's making a claim on imitzasiyah. He's saying, I found it, or the other case the Gemara explained before, he's saying that I bought it, but he's only making that claim. The actual claim is a false claim, but it's not with an intention to steal though. He's making this false claim because he knows that this person, or he thinks that this person might have owed him money, so he wants to get the money back. And then afterwards, I'll figure out if it's like true or it's not true. Okay, now the Gemara comes back to the case of our Mishnah and has an Ibaya here. Again, the case of the Mishnah, Shnai Meichsen Betalis, so the halach is Yachloiku, Baya Rab Zera had the following Shaila. Takfa Echad B'Fanenu. So these two people are grabbing onto a talis and they walk into the Bezdin, and one of them grabs the talis out of the hands of his friend. Mahu. What's going to be the halach in such a case? Will we still paskin Yachloiku? Do we still split this talis? Says the Gemara, when did Rab Zera ask this question? What's the shaila here? Hey Chidami, what's the case? Either Shasek, if the case over here is that the person that you grabbed it from was just totally quiet about this. He allowed you sort of to grab it. If so, I do your delay. If in front of Bezdin, this guy is quiet when you grab it from him, so then he's being maida. He's just basically admitting that it belongs to you, and that's why he's allowing you to grab it from him. So for sure, you should be able to keep the whole thing for yourself. On the other hand, Vida Katsavach, if as this person in front of Bezdin, he's grabbing it from you and you're screaming, you're protesting, and the person is stronger and he still grabs it from you, so then what proof is that at all? Why should he be allowed to keep it? What should this person do? For sure the halacha should still be Yachloiku. And says the Gemara Loit Tzriches, this question, this Ibaya of Rab Zera is in the following case. The Shasik Mei Kare, when this person grabbed the talis from you, so in the beginning when he grabbed it from you, you were quiet, you sort of allowed him to grab it. But v'hadar, after he grabbed it out of your hands, tzavach, then you start protesting and saying, this talis, I still claim, it's kula shali, it's still all mine, you weren't allowed to grab it from me. So here is where Rab Zera has an iboya. What's going on over here? With this person that in the beginning allowed his friend to grab it, and then he starts protesting and saying that it's his. Do I say midashtik, because he was quiet in the beginning, I do ya delay. So that he was maided. By the fact that he was quiet in the beginning, nobody is quiet when someone grabs something from you that it belongs to you. Even though he protests later, that's because he changed his mind or he wants to get something that's not his, but he was already quiet in the beginning, so he's made it. Or I say no, even the katsavach. Hashta, if now he's protesting and saying he's still claiming that it's his, igloi milse, what this reveals is the high shasik meikara, that he cannot come and say, you know why I was quiet in the beginning? Savat, I thought to myself, I was standing right in front of the Bezdin. Bezdin sees that this guy's grabbing it out of my hands. Why do I have to protest? Bezdin sees the fact that he's grabbing it out of my hands. So I'm relying on the Bezdin to understand that half his mind, and that the halacha, the psak din shall still be achloik, and he's still claiming kula shali. So that's a shayla here. It's a suffix. The simple pshat of the Gemara over here is it's a suffix. Is this person being maide or is this person not being maide by being quiet in the beginning when he grabbed it? Amar Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman answers and says, Toshima, bring you a rai from what it says in the Braise. Braise says about this case of Shnai Meichs and Betalis, Bamed Varam Amurim. When is the halacha of our Mishnah apply when it says that the halacha is yachloiki, that we split it? Sheshnei Madukam Baf. They're both holding on to the talis. If only one of them is holding this talis, then if they both claim that it's all theirs, the one that's holding on to it keeps it, and the other one's going to have to prove that it's his. That's what the Braise says. Gemara asks on this. Hey Chidami, what's the case of this Braise here? If we're going to learn this Braise literally as it says, Pshita. Obviously, if someone's holding on to something, and someone comes and claims it's all mine, you have no proof, you're not even holding on to it, or for sure you don't get anything. What's this Braise even saying? Ella, says the Gemara, isn't the case here of this Braise, Shetokfa echad b'faneinu, like the case that Abzeda asked about, in a case where someone grabbed it out of his friend's hand when they were both holding on to it, and they grabbed it in front of Bezdin, and in the beginning he was quiet, and in the end he was protesting about it, and it's in this case that the Braise is saying that once you grab it, and now it's in your hands fully, you can keep it. And we consider it to be a Idas Baldin. Says the Gemara Loi. That's not what this Braise is teaching. There's no raya to the boy of Rab Zera. This Braise, the Gemara is going to give two answers. This Braise is talking about the following case. They came into Bezdin, they were both holding on to this talis. And the Bezdin paskin, they should go out and divide this talis. V'nafku, they went out and they went out of the Bezdin. Then v'hodar also. Then they came back into the Bezdin. The fight is not over. Bezdin already paskind. And now they went out of Bezdin. And now they come back into the Bezdin. Kitafas lachad minayu. And only one of them is holding on to this talis now. Hi, Omar. And this guy that's holding on to the talis fully for himself. What happened? Bezdin just passing yachleiku. Why are you holding the whole talis in your hands? So he says, I'll tell you what happened. After we walked out of the Bezdin, he was made that it's all mine. That's why I have it. And but the other person says, no, I'm not, I was never made. Bidami yagarti in LA. I told him, for now, I'm renting it to you for a certain price. And that's why he's holding on to his hands. So now what's the halach in this case? So we say to this person that claims that he rented it to the other person, and you're fighting with this person. Till a second ago, you're suspecting this guy and you're screaming that he's stealing it from you. And now you're ready to do business with him and you're going to rent it with him, even without any edus. All of a sudden, you're a friend with him. This kind of claim that you're making, that you rented it to him, does not hold any water. So therefore, the guy that's holding on to it now and says that you will made it to him will accept that claim. It's one shot. Or we could say that what the Braise is being mechadish over here is as follows: Kediktani, the asala kaman kitafis lachad minayu. It's like the Braise says. When they walked into the Bezdin right in the beginning, only one of them was holding on to it. Your question was, in such a case, obviously, the one that holds on to it, it's his, and the other one, what was the Chiddush here? The Chiddush is, Ve'idach, the other one, Misrach ba sruchi. He's holding on to the fringes a little bit, he's dragging it, just a little bit of the talis, he's holding on to it. But the other one is really the one that's holding on to the more or less the entire talis. So in such a case, the Braise says that the guy that's Misrach Suruch is just holding on to a bit of it, gets nothing. And I want to clarify, the Chiddush is primarily according to Sumchis. We had this Machlokes brought before on Daf Beis Amid Beis. Generally, when there's any money that there's an argument about, and there's a doubt about who's the owner, so Rabbanan say the rule always is, that the one that has it keeps it, and the one that's trying to take it out from him has to prove it. And what does Sumchis say? They usually say Yachloiku. The case where Sumcha says this is when you have a shorish or nagachasapara and it's not clear if it killed this fetus or it didn't. Sumcha says the halach is yachloiku. So the Gemara explains. Sumcha says when you have a case of money that's in doubt, so you always divide it below shvua, even without a shvua. In our case, Sumchas will agree that there's no point of yachloiku here, even though these people are arguing about it, and this guy is holding on to a little bit of the talis. You don't divide it. Why? The sircha lav klumi. The fact that he's holding on to it a little bit, the edges of the talis, that's nothing. Rashi says an expression, ein shor shachad lefanecha. When you have a doubt in front of you, when you see shor shenagach hasapara, and the story itself shows you that there's a tzad that he's right and a tzad that he's right. So there's tinus about a story that happened over here, which is unclear. Then Sumcha says there's a halacha of yachloiki, you split it. But over here, when one of them is holding on to the entire talis, and the other one is holding on just misrach sruchi, it's not considered to be the case itself that we see in front of our eyes is not considered to be a suffix. Just the fact that there's tinus here, that one claims that the whole thing is his, the tinus itself is not enough to say achleiku. There has to be in the actual metzias of the case itself that you see a suffix that you should say achleiku. And therefore, in such a case, there's no din of achleiku here. Going back to the originally boy of Rab Zera. When this person grabbed something and his friend was quiet in the beginning, and then afterwards he protested about this, so we never answered that shaila. So the Gemara now says, if you're going to answer that shaila of Rab Zera and say, that if one of them grabbed it in front of us, then the halacha would be because he's not protesting, so we say that he was not maida, and therefore we take this talis out of the one's hand that grabbed it. So then the halacha would also be clear if he did not grab it, but rather higdisha. If this person is standing there with his friend and they're both holding on to the talis in front of the bezdin, and one of them just says, "I'm being makdish the whole talis," ain't a mukadeshes. So obviously it would not be mukadeshes as well. If he has no ability to grab it and keep it for himself, so then how should he have an ability to be makdish it, to declare it all to be hektish? He has no power over it, no ownership over it at all. So he can't be makdish it. The Pashtus, the Gemara is speaking over here about the other half that is in your friend's half, the half that you get because of Yachloki in your hands, that you could be Makdish. But over here it's talking about the other half that it won't be Mukadeshes, because if you can't grab it, you can't be Makdish it. However, says the Gemara, if you'll say the halacha over here is when you grab this talis out of your friend's hand, then he's quiet about this. If we're going to paskin this iboy of Rab Zera, that then you can keep that talis. So now, what would be the halacha if higdisha beloy takfa? If you makdish this talis and you did not grab it yet, mahu. What's going to be the halacha here? Could the hektish take effect even on that half of the talis that your friend is holding on? That the halacha yachleik would be that it's his. So do we say like this? Kivin da Amar, since the master has taught, Amirase legavoya, when you say something that something belongs to hektish, you verbally are makdish something, that you're giving it away to hektish, kemisirase le'adiyatami. It's like you gave it over to someone. It's like if you physically give it. Regarding hektish, you don't have to physically give it. Just saying words, that itself makes it hektish. So therefore, command the takfa dami. It's just like you grabbed it. Just like since we see in this case that if you would have grabbed it, you would have the power to keep it. So too, when you makdish it, the kayach of your hektish takes effect. Or perhaps I say, hashtami hale takfa. The fact that you could grab it and keep it, but now you did not grab it though. Oksiv, and the pasuk says, "V'ish ki yakdish es beisay kaidish v'gaymer." A person is makdish's house, then it's all kaidesh. So what does it say here? It has to be like its house. Beisay. Ma beisay b'reshusay. Just like your house is not only your ownership, but it's actually in your domain. You have a possession and a power and a control over it. Av kol b'reshusay. So too, it has to be something which is not just yours, but something that you have a real control over it. It's in your reshus. La fukyahai delay b'reshusay, which excludes this case, which is not in your reshus. So therefore, since your friend is still holding on to it, and you're being makdish it, the hektish will not take effect. So really the basis of the Gemara's question, the way Taisus, the way the Rishonim explained the Gemara's question over here is that in this case, when you're being makdish something that potentially you could have grabbed it and kept it, and when your friend is quiet, it would have been yours. So over here, when you're being makdish it, when you were makdish it, your friend didn't protest either. He was quiet. That's what we're talking about. In the beginning, he was quiet. Later, he screamed, but in the beginning, he was quiet. So just like if you would have grabbed it in this kind of situation, it would have been yours. So too now when you will makdish it and your friend is quiet, should I say that even though it's not yet in your possession, b'shas you will makdish it, your friend is still holding it in his hands, but nevertheless, since potentially you could have grabbed it while he's quiet and then it would have been yours, over here when he's quiet, you're being makdish something that is considered to be like it's already totally in your control and your possession. Why is it totally in your control? Your friend is still holding on to it. But because if I would have grabbed it in this kind of situation, I would have been able to kept it. He was quiet, and then we would paskin that kifa grabbing it would be yours. So if you makdish it in this situation, that's enough to consider it yours, that you could be makdish it and the hektish takes effect. And therefore, the fact that he was quiet, the hektish takes effect, and you take it all away from him and give it to hektish. Or the Gemara says, no, the fact that you could have potentially grabbed it and kept it, but now you didn't grab it yet. So therefore, just because potentially you could have grabbed it, that's not enough to consider it already fully in your possession, in your control. He's still holding on to it. So therefore, when you will makdish it, the hektish does not take effect. That's the basis of the Gemara Shaila here. So Gemara says, Tashama, I'll bring you a raya from the following story that happened. Ahi masusa Bava Metzia lo betrei. there was this bathhouse that two people were arguing about the ownership of this. One person said, this is my bathhouse. The other person says, no, it's my bathhouse. Now, before we just see what happened here, what's halach in such a case when you have a bathhouse that two people are arguing about? There's no yachleika, or you don't split this. This is a case where none of them have any chazakya. There's no one has any actual possession over this bathhouse. Here, the halacha would be called the olam gavar. Whoever is stronger is the one that gets it. So this is also a similar thing over here. Just like in the ibaya, it's a situation where you have a potential, you have an ability to grab it from your friend and keep it. In this kind of situation, when your friend is quiet, that's what the ibaya is talking about. So too over here with this bathhouse, you have a potential to possess this bathhouse. That's what the concept of kol dolam gavar is. Whoever's stronger and possesses it could keep it. So you have a potential to grab it and keep this bathhouse. That's the story of this case here. So now what happened? None of them grabbed it yet. But Kam Chad Minayu, similar to what we're learning before, one of these people that were fighting about this got up and Aktisha. He declared it to be Hektish. So what happened? Parsha Miner of Chananya v'Ravaishi v'Kol Rabbanan. Chananya, Ravaishi, all the Rabbanan, they didn't want to use this bathhouse because they felt that when he was Maktish it, the Hektish took effect. Ravaishi says to Rabbe, when you go to Rav Chisda in the city of Kfari, ask him a shaila about this case. Did the hektish take effect or not? So when Rabbe was on his way, he didn't even get to Rav Chisda, but he came to the city of Surah, Amalei Rav Amnuna, and he asked Rav Amnuna about this, and Rav Amnuna answered him. He said, Masnisini, this shaila that you're asking over here is the Mishnah. So again, the point of the shaila over here is, when you have a potential to grab something, does that give you enough of an ability to be makdish it? Or do we say, no, the potential to grab doesn't give you the possession and the base side, the ownership to be able to be makdish it? So Rav Amnuna said, we can learn this from a Mishnah by a suffix b'chayr. So Mishnah says as follows, suffix b'chayris. You have a suffix of a firstborn if it's a b'chayr or not. Is it a firstborn or not? Maybe the animal was miscarried before and it's not clear what it miscarried, if now this animal that's born is a firstborn or not. And this is echad b'chayr adam, whether we're speaking about a firstborn by a person, the din of pidyon aben, v'echad b'chayr beheme, whether regarding the firstborn of an animal that has to be given to the kayin, and that's bein tahir and bein tmeim. Whether an animal which is tahir, the firstborn has to go to the kain, or bein tmeim, the firstborn donkey also has to go to the kain. You have to switch it with a lamb. So in all these cases, so here you have a suffix. With Gemara focuses on the case of the behemoth. You have a case of a behemoth which Yisrael has now in his possession, and it's a suffix whether it belongs to the kain, whether it belongs to you. So the Mishnah says, what's the halacha? The one that has it in his possession keeps it, and the one that wants to take it out is going to have to bring a raya, which would simply mean that the kain, if he wants to take it from the Yisrael, would have to bring a raya. But now the Gemara says, V'tani alam, we learned about this, that even though the Yisrael keeps it, and the kain can't, the Yisrael keeps it, and the kain has to bring a raya, asurim begizu ba'avayda. But nevertheless, we have to be machmer and treat this suffix b'chayr as a b'chayr, and therefore you can't share the wool of it, you can't work with it. The b'chayr has the kedusha of a carbon. The b'chayr is brought as a carbon. So you have to treat it with the kedusha of a carbon. Now the question is, why do you have to treat it with the kedusha of a carbon? The Yisrael is the one that has the chazak over it. It's in his possession. And we said, so here, the point that the Gemara is going to say now is that when it's said in this Mishnah, the way the Gemara understands now is, when it says in the Mishnah, who's the one that's the muhsik here? While the Yisrael has it in his possession, he's the muhsik. But what happens if the Kohen just went and grabbed it? And now the Kohen has it in his possession. After the Kohen grabbed it, the Kohen could keep it. And now the Yisrael is going to have to bring a raya to take it out of the Kohen. Once the Kohen grabs it, he can keep it. So therefore the Gemara says like this. Over here, what's the case? The Omar, you add over here probably the Omar. 1 second. Let's say over here the Omar. Or the chi, okay, whatever. The Omar, Tokfei Kayin, Emitzi Noisem Yodai. If the Kayin would grab this suffix b'chayr, we would allow the Kayin to keep it. Diktani, Amaitzim Chaver Olavaraya.
You can do whatever he wants with it, the Kayin?
Well, the Kayin, once he grabs it, I don't think he can bring it as a carbon on the Mizbeach because it's a suffix. But yeah, it's a carbon. No, he still can't. No, it's a carbon. No. But if the Kayin grabs it, though, he can keep it. And the Yisrael can't take it away from him. And the Ktani Hamaitz Mechaver Olavaraya. Right now, the way the Gemara understands Hamaitz Mechaver Olavaraya means, just like if the Yisrael has it in his possession, he keeps it now. If the Kayin went ahead and grabbed it, now the Kayin keeps it. But nevertheless, even before the Kohen grabbed it, but nevertheless, we treat it like hektish, and there's no shearing and there's no working with it. So what do you see from here? The Gemara's raya over here is, why should we treat this Safik B'chayr as something which is hektish? If it's something which is right now in the Yisrael's possession, and it's only a Safik, so there's the din of Bava Metzia, so the Yisrael has the current rights monetarily over it. So why should we have to treat it as hektish? So the Gemara at this point understands, Rav Amnuna understood, the only reason why it has to be treated as hektish is since potentially the Kohen would be able to grab it and keep it. So therefore, even before the Kohen grabbed it, we already treat it, we give it a halacha of hektish, you're not allowed to share it and you're not allowed to work with it. So the Gemara says, if so, from here is a raya to the case that we were asking about before regarding the talis or regarding the bathhouse, in a case where you potentially could have grabbed it, whether by the bathhouse, because the halach is called olam gava, you potentially could have grabbed it, or by the case of the talis, where you potentially could have grabbed it in this kind of situation when your friend was quiet, just the fact that you have a potential to grab it gives you now the ability to go ahead and be makdish it. And therefore, the hektish would be chal, the hektish would take effect. The basis of what Rav Amnuna is saying over here is, he understood that this whole concept of hektish by this b'chayr is based on the monetary ownership. The status of its hektish, first you have to decide what's the status of the ownership. Once you understand who has the ownership of monetarily, that is what decides whether there's a din of hektish here or not. So therefore, Rav Amnuna understood the only way to explain why there's a hektish when it's still in the possession of the Yisrael is because the Kohen can grab it, and monetarily he would be able to keep it. So therefore, we can say that even before the Kohen grabbed it, when it's in the possession of the Yisrael, the din of hektish will be in effect. So the Gemara answers, no, this is not this whole thing. This is not the way we have to understand that Mishnah. Amalei Rabbe, so Rabbe answered him and said, Kedusha is b'char kamrit. You want to prove this idea from the Kedusha of a b'char? It's a whole different story. La'olam ei malach. Really, I'll tell you what's the halacha. What if the Kohen goes and grabs this Safik b'char? What's the halacha? So number one, he argues and says the pshat, the way to understand that Mishnah is takvei Kohen. If the Kohen would go and grab this from the Yisrael, we would take it away from the Kohen. When it said in that Mishnah, what did it mean? It meant from the Yisrael. And if the Kohen grabs it, the Kohen has to give it back. So you can't say that the basis of why we treat this b'chayr as hektish is because of the potential that the Kohen could grab it. Nothing to do with that. If the Kohen grabs it, he has to give it back. Nevertheless, this Safik b'chayr, while it's in the possession of Yisrael, it'll be also to work with it. Why? The kedusha b'mei le'ashani, because that's a different kind of kedusha. That's a kedusha that's not based on the monetary ownership. It's a kedusha that's from birth. That's a separate thing from the monetary ownership. From the moment it's born, there's a Safik: is it born as a b'chayr or is it not born as a b'chayr? And therefore, we have to be machmer regarding the kedusha, that the kedusha is in effect. Nothing to do with the monetary ownership. Before we were discussing a person that wants to be makdish a bathhouse, he wants to be makdish this talis. So over here, you have to have some possession over it, some monetary possession to have the ability to be makdish. Over here though, the monetary ownership and the kedusha are two different things. So even if the halacha is takvei Kohen Metzia miyadai, and there's no monetary power that the Kohen has over it, but the kedusha is still there. There's still a Safik regarding the kedusha, and for that we're machmer that the kedusha takes effect. This is a very, very famous Gemara, this shaila of takvei Kohen Metzia miyadai, and this is really a fundamental question regarding this halacha of hametz mechaveri olav haraya. When there's this halacha, when someone has money in his possession which is in doubt, could someone grab it from him? Could you not? Most Rishonim paskin, the halacha is takvei Kohen Metzia miyadai. That once you have a chazaka over something, which is a Safik, then nobody can grab from you. You can keep it. Okay, so now the Gemara says weiter. Takvei Kohen, no. The halacha is takvei Kohen Metzia miyadai. We paskin like Rabbe. Takvei Kohen Metzia miyadai. The Rambam paskins Metzia miyadai. It's a big discussion. There's a whole sefer that the Shach wrote on this sefer takvei Kohen about this discussion over here. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. Amalei Rav Chananya leRabbe. Rav Chananya said to Rabbe, Tanya de Messiah. I'll bring you a braise that's a proof to the point that you just said, that when you talk about such a kind of a case, which is a Safik, so over here, the halacha is that by a Safik b'chayr, if the Kohen is going to grab it, we're going to take it away from the Kohen. The Kohen has to give it back. What's the raya? Because it says in the Braisa, Sveikais nechnasen ledir leis aser. If you have a case, this is speaking about the halacha of Maisa Behemet, when a person has 10 animals that are all born in the same year, in the same group, so then you have to take them all into a barn, and then they walk out in a single file line, and the 10th one becomes Maisa Behemah. What happens if you have Sfeikis? You have animals that it's not clear if they're Chayiv and Maisa Behemah or not. This is a case that Rashi is going to explain based on the Gemara later. We're talking about a case where there was a suffix of Pidyon Petach Hamayr. These animals here, they may belong to the Kayin, they may not. So therefore, it's a suffix if they're even chayiv and ma'aser behemah or not. So the Brisa says, even though it's a suffix if it's chayiv and ma'aser or not, you take him into the barn and you give ma'aser from them. Now, but if you're going to say the halacha over is talk for kayin, if the kayin would grab this animal that may belong to him, we don't take it away from the kayin. Why would you have to misafik give the ma'aser of this? If the halach is that if the kayin grabs it, the kayin can keep it, and he's saying the very fact that the kayin has the potential to grab it, that means he already has a certain ownership over it even before he grabs it. So how could you even take one of those animals and put it into the barn which you're taking ma'aser behemah from? It could come out that animal that may belong to the kayin, and the kayin already, even before he grabs it, has a certain ownership over it. That could be the one that you would hit as the 10th one to be Maisa Behemah, and now you're patterning yourself of Maisa Behemah with an animal that really belongs to the Kayin. How could you do such a thing? So therefore, what Avchanani is proving is, it must be that if the Kayin grabs it, the Kayin cannot keep it. And therefore, if it's a suffix, and it's now in your Rishus, you have the full right over it, and therefore you could even use it for Maisa Behemah. Abaye says, no, if this is your proof, this is not a good proof. Because in the case of is this person has 9 animals, and then there's now this 10th animal that he wants to combine, which is a suffix that might belong to the kain and might not. And therefore, when the Brisa says that you should combine that 10th animal, which is a suffix, to the other 9, so the reason is because either way you look at it, it's no problem to combine that 10th animal. Because if it does not belong to the kain and it's chayiv and ma'aser behemah, so then shapika ma'aser. So then the ma'aser that you give is good ma'aser. And if it does not belong to if it's not chayiv and ma'aser, that is because it belongs to the kain, so then tisha. You only have 9 here. You only have another 9 animals. Lav bari surininu. And if there's only 9 animals, there's no mitzvah of ma'aser at all. So therefore, in such a case, the reason why it's saying that you could include even this animal that might belong to the kayin in the barn together with the other animals, because memanav shach, you're not taking the money of the kayin. So even if the halacha would be might see that might see that if the kayin grabs it, the kayin can keep it. And that shows that if the kayin already has the ownership of it, you can use it for the ma'aser behemah either way. It doesn't matter. Because memanav shach, you're not using something from the kayin to pati yourself from ma'aser behemah, as the Gemara explained. But then the Gemara retracts this and says, no. Abaye says, I made a mistake. Lav milsi damri. The point that I just said is not true. The sfeike lav bar isurihu. Because when it comes to something which is only a suffix of whether it's chayiv and ma'aser behemah or not, there is no din of ma'aser behemah in a matzav of a suffix. The whole halacha that the Torah says that you chayiv to give ma'aseres in the case of a suffix the whole halacha that the Torah says that you have to give ma'aser behemah is if it's vadai ma'aser behemah. If it's suffix ma'aser behemah, there's no chiyuv in the first place. There's no point in saying the manashach to give there's no chiyuv of ma'aser behemah at all. Where do we see this? The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, what happens if you're counting these animals? As I mentioned, the animals are walking out in a single file line from a door of the barn. Now, one of these animals that you counted jumped back into the barn itself. Kulam peturim. They're all going to be pater of ma'aser behemah. Now, if you're going to say that when there's a suffix, whether it's chayev or pater of this ma'aser behemah, you have to separate the ma'aser. Shouldn't you have to give this ma'aser over here even when this animal jumped back into the barn? Because if the animal that's walking out here is not that one that jumped back into the line, then shapim ma'aser. So then it's ma'aser. And if the animal that's walking out is that animal that jumped back into the barn and you already counted it once and you're counting it a second time, so then niftar b'minyan haroi. There's a halacha that once the animal is counted, then it becomes pater of ma'aser behemah just by the fact that it was counted, even if you didn't end up actually giving the ma'aser behemah from the 10th one. Where do we see this? The Amar Rava or the Amar Rabbe taught minyan aroi pater. Once you counted it, even if you didn't end up giving the ma'aser, just by the fact that it was counted, 1, 2, 3, even if you didn't get to number 10, it already patters it from Meiser. Rashi brings us, learned out from the Pasuk, Mashu Yavar, that even just by the fact that it was counted, it's pater. So over here in this case, when the animal jumps back into the barn and you're counting, why shouldn't you continue counting and giving Meiser Behemah? And either way, when you're going to count, either we're going to say that what you're counting is not the one that jumped back into the barn, and even if it is from the one that jumped back into the barn, it's still going to be pater. Even though you're including it, one that already jumped back into the barn, but it doesn't matter. Once it was counted once, that minyan eroi, the fact that it was counted once, already paters it from Ma'aseh Behemer. So Elamayis lach lemeimar. What's the explanation here for this Mishnah? Why do you say that they're all pater and you don't have to count again? Because asiri vali amar achmana v'loy asiri safik. When the Torah says that you have to give ma'aseh, that's only if it's a vadai ma'aseh behemet. But if there's a suffix, then there's no chiv in the first place to count and to do it mimanavshach. This whole thing mimanavshach, there's no chiv to do this in the first place. So achanami. So therefore, the same thing also going back to the case before when we spoke about this animal that's a suffix that it might belong to the kayin. Asiri vali amar achmana v'loy asiri suffix. You wouldn't have to give the ma'aseh behemet if it was a case of a suffix. So it must be. So therefore, Abai says the raya that he brought before, that the halacha is takvei kayin mitzia naisemiyadai, must be true. The only reason why you're giving the mice over here is because there's no suffix about this animal. This animal is a suffix, but if the kayin grabs it, we take it away from the kayin. We give it back to the Yisrael. So this animal right now is in the possession of the Yisrael, and therefore it's included in the din of Ma'aseh Behemoth. The kayin doesn't have any power to grab it. So therefore, from here, Abaye brought a raya to this concept that Rabbi said that the case of the suffix, the halacha is amaytzim mechaveri olav haraya. The Yisrael has the full possession over it, at kedei kach that you could even give Ma'aseh Behemoth from it, and there's no suffix about this. It's a siri vada. It's 100% Ma'aseh Behemoth. That was the raya of Abaye, and like I mentioned, most Rishonim in Paskin like this halacha, when there's a case of a suffix regarding this Ma'aseh Behemoth or this suffix bechor that is, or suffix pidyon aben, suffix petach hamor that is. We'll see later in the Gemara that the halacha is takvei kayin mitzia miyadai, that we take it away from the kayin and it goes back to the Yisrael.